everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are starting a brand new series today. I am so excited, and it almost didn't happen. So, my name's Romania Black. If you're not familiar with my channel, I'm an English teacher and a speech coach, and when I'm not doing those things, I like to watch anime and donghua and read manga and talk about them on this channel for extended periods of time. So, I have been recommended Berserk for a long time. Somehow, I never watched it growing up. I feel like I was just young enough to escape being in the age range that would really appreciate Berserk. And then it just kind of wasn't the popular series when I was older enough to appreciate it and go back to it. And so now I'm finally here, but this almost didn't happen, y'all. Let me tell you the story about getting this. I'll promise I'll make it short, but I was coming up on Vinland Saga ending and I wanted to do a poll to replace it. And I'd been talking about doing a retro poll, but I just started another retro series and I was like, I don't know if I want to do multiple retro series at once. So I asked patrons to give me suggestions of shows they thought had a similar vibe to Vinland Saga. In terms of plot, in terms of tone, in terms of themes, I'm like something that will fill the Vinland Saga hole in my heart now that season 2 of that series has ended and I'm waiting on future series. So the series that got the most recommendations were Berserk, the 1997 version of the anime and manga, Dororo, 86, Fate Zero, Golden Kamui, Magi, Psychopaths, and Promised Neverland. So I did a poll on Patreon. Had 363 votes. At first, 86 was winning by a lot, and everybody was like, okay, 86 is going to win. But then the Berserk fans came out of the woodwork and were like, oh no, we're going to have Berserk win. And then the people that didn't like Berserk was like, well, we don't want 86 to win, so we're going to vote for Promised Neverland. And I was like, what is happening? So it became this Game of Thrones political intrigue for the entire week where everybody was in the Discord commenting like, did you vote for this? Well, if I vote for this, how will this change this? And it was neck and neck the entire time. And in the last hour, it was Promised Neverland 60 votes, Berserk 58 votes, and then the others are exactly as you see here. And I thought, okay, Promised Neverland's gonna win. The dark horse. I thought Berserk was gonna win in a landslide, but okay. And then in the final minutes, someone changed their Promised Neverland vote to a Berserk vote, making it tied. And I was like, oh my gosh! So, because as you'll probably see on my channel, I'm watching a lot of series right now, didn't have time to watch 2 at the same time. So the philanthropy tier on Patreon, which is our highest tier, they actually get to break ties. So there were 17 in the tier at the time, 3 opted not to vote, but 14 did, and 64% of the vote was for Berserk, and 36% was for Promised Neverland. So here we are. Now, I have a couple things I want to say before we start. I have somehow, in all of my years, avoided anything about Berserk. I know it seems like something medieval. I was telling my brother's been really nice and not spoiled me. I'm like, I think it's like medieval and about fairies and stuff. And he was like, ha 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 ha, and then skirked into the darkness, never to be seen again. So yeah, I have no clue what this series is about. I know there's a guy with a big sword. I think his name is Guts. That's all I know. I know nothing else. So I only ask you all, please, I'm going to try to have a moderator look at comments each week just to be safe, but I will ask you all this, please. I like reading comments. I like interacting with you all. Please, no spoilers. Please, no hints or clues. I like talking about the episodes as they are and then the episodes that come before them. So I don't want to know like any plot points to come. I don't want to know like, oh, just wait till you get to episode 6. It's going to be great. I don't want to know that. I don't want to know like what these characters are going to end. I want to experience it blind for the first time and you all get to see my reactions and then we all get to talk about it. And I know that can be frustrating commenting, but I just ask you please, from the bottom of my heart, it will make this experience so much more fun for you, so much more fun for me if we go that route. Also, I do understand the idea that I am going to be watching the anime with the Japanese subtitles. So there's a reason for that. I had lots of people tell me the English dub is amazing. I believe you. However, my patrons have expressed a concern that they want to watch something that has subtitles for various reasons. And unfortunately, with the 1997 versions I've looked for, I cannot find an English dub with subtitles for the 97 anime. So I'm making a compromise. The compromise is we're going to watch the anime with Japanese subtitles, and then if it's cool with you all, we're going to watch the movies with the English dub, because I'm sure the movies are a little bit maybe older or maybe newer. They'll likely have an English dub with subtitles available, I'm hoping. So that's going to be the idea, or I can buy a copy and watch it there. That's my hope. So the English dub we'll watch with the movie, so I'll get to experience that along with you all. But the original 25 episodes, we're going to do Japanese subtitles. I like Japanese subtitles anyway because they're closer to the original translation, and with those, I feel like with English dubs, especially in the 90s, there's sometimes corners cut to make the dialogue fit that may take away from the original translation. And with a series like this, I want to get as close to the original as possible. And then we'll be looking at the manga afterwards. The other thing I wanted to bring up is again, I don't want spoilers, but I had someone a few weeks ago be like, oh, well, make sure, don't watch episode 1 until the end. And I was like, no, that's a spoiler. That's telling me there's something to be spoiled. But also, I'm not doing that because I'm going in this series blind. The animators put it first as episode 1 for a reason. Now, when we get to the very end, we can talk about maybe why that person wanted to make me watch it at the end, but I'm not going to do that. If they should have thought of that and put it to the end if that was their reasoning. But I'm going in blind, so I'm going to watch it as such. And I know someone said the manga starts a different way than the anime. That's fine. I don't want to know how. I don't want to know why. I will cross those bridges when we get to them. But I'm going in blind, so I'm just going to treat this series like it should be. So I'm going to treat it as if I just sat down in my chair and was like, it's time to watch Berserk and have a fun time. So that's my goal, but I'm excited for y'all to join me on this journey. It's been a long time coming. I have no clue what to expect, but I have a feeling it's going to be a lot of fun talking with y'all about this series and seeing what we shall see. So, bwahaha. In any case, I hope y'all are excited. My 2 dogs are here. I've got one at my feet. One wants me to throw a toy, and he's going to be very upset here soon when I stop throwing that toy. So we're going to be done now, Huck. No more. Go lay down. There we go. So, in any case, I hope y'all are excited. I'm so hyped. So here we are. We are going to start Berserk, episode 1. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1. And let's do it to it, Lars. So that was fun. This is Whiteboard Coon. If you are joining me for the first time, Whiteboard Coon is my helper in explaining all things. And sometimes Whiteboard Coon comes out, sometimes he doesn't. It just depends on if there's stuff to explain. But I feel, and now my dog's like, you can throw this now. I feel like we have many things to write on Whiteboard Coon. So, okay. Like I said in the preview, I don't want to know any spoilers. I don't want to know the reasons why they aired this episode first. I don't want to know the reasons. We can speculate on it. My big thing with theories is that in the comments, if you would like me to read your comment, I don't want to be confirmed or deconfirmed whether I'm right or wrong. I'm fine with being wrong. There's probably a lot of things I'm going to posit that I'm going to be wrong about, and that's totally cool. But I like to theorize. I come up with some crackpot theories sometimes. Sometimes I'm close to maybe the answers, and sometimes I'm as far off the mark as we can be. But I like to theorize. I like to have fun with it. So I want to talk about this episode and write some things down. My theory is a lot of shows do this. It's the classic, we'll start at this point here, and then we'll backtrack and tell you how we got here. The best way to explain it by breaking the fourth wall is if you've seen Disney's The Emperor's New Groove. They start at this one point where Cusco is like in the rain and tragic, and it's like the end of the second act, and everything's all doom and gloom, and he's like, how'd this guy get here? Well, let's back up and show you. And that's exactly what they're doing here. So if you told me that this season, these 25 episodes are going to end with our main character getting back to this point and it going from there, I would totally believe you and be like, oh, okay, that's where we're at. Because we set up a lot of questions to be asked about the world building, to ask how our character got here, etc., etc. And then the end of this episode's like, now we're going to backtrack and show you how we got to this point. And it's like, cool. I'm excited to find out. So I don't think this was confusing as far as why they chose to do this narrative first. What I think is interesting is that they give us all of these things to ponder and wonder about. And it's kind of like a way to entice you and kind of hook you into the series, to get you to know, like, how did this guy get to the point where he feels so badly about the way that the world works that he's totally fine shooting this guy in the face over and over again rather than just killing him and getting it over with. He wants him to suffer. What has made our protagonist get to this point in his life that he feels this way? Well, that's what we're going to find out, right? So that is kind of fun. I like that we're going that route with it. It's very exciting. So but we need to talk about this. So yeah, let's go through this episode, and as we go through, we're gonna write some things down to talk about it. In this world, is the destiny of mankind controlled by some transcendental entity or by law? And I like that law's in red, right? So let's go ahead and just write up here on whiteboard, Coon, the ideas behind this. The idea is the world, and thus man, controlled, is it controlled by the law of the world or by a god? They say transcendental entity, but it is basically a god. So, and the idea of that, is it something that is outside? Because if it's by a god, it's outside of human control, right? It's something that is not going to be able to be controlled by human themselves. But if it's the law of the world or the law of humanity, that is, controlled and created by humanity. Because, yeah, if it's justice in the law, people control that. They change it, they alter it, they're the ones that design it. But if it is beyond that, if it's by a higher power, there's not really much humanity can do about that. So I like that we're setting this up automatically, the idea of, is there such a thing as free will, or is everything all a preordained, predestined fate, and then we can't do anything about it? So, is this going to be basically the idea of free will versus fate? The subject of many a story, right? Because that's a very existential thing to talk about. And so the series goes from there, saying, is it like the hand of God is hovering above? And I will make note that I'm probably going to talk a little bit about Vinland Saga and maybe Attack on Titan or similar series as we go, because this is the series replacing Vinland Saga that was chosen because it bears similar themes. So there's probably going to be a little bit of reference. So there may be a little bit of, I'm going to try not to spoil Attack on Titan or Vinland Saga for you. If you've not seen those series and you're watching this, you should go watch them. They're great. But I will say Vinland Saga does have a theme in it about the idea of God abandoning humanity, and that God does not want to help humanity. It kind of gives them these tasks that they cannot achieve. And so there are characters in the series that are actively rebelling against God, or in this case, rebelling against the transcendental entity. So that's going to be a big question here of, is our main character one of those characters as well? What do we do with that? Are they trying to prove that there is free will? The brand on his neck suggests otherwise, but we'll talk about that when we get to it, right? We'll get into those sort of things. But is it the idea that God is hovering above and we're like little ants and it's just kind of doing what it pleases with us, right? And so there is the question, at least it is true that man has no control even over his own will. Now that line at the end there kind of seems to contradict and make this all a big rhetorical question, because at first they ask the question, is it fate or is it free will? But then at the end of this little monologue, it's like, well, mankind doesn't have control over their own will. So I'm like, well, this is all rhetorical then. The answer is that it is a transcendental entity that is controlling everything, and humanity doesn't have any choice in what happens to it. That's what the episode is saying. And maybe our protagonist is actively going to try and prove that wrong for the narrator and for us, right? So again, talk about Vinland Saga. We talk about making this sword out of from the iron here, the sword that is as tall as he is, right? I love the fantasy element of it. It was reminding me of Final Fantasy VII, of Cloud with the big giant sword. It logistically shouldn't work. It should be too heavy and cumbersome to use, but fantasy stories make it work out. It's great. I love it. But yeah, the moment we saw the iron, the blacksmith creating the cast and the mold, I was like, okay, we are going to start from a point, and then this series is going to backtrack and cover how we got up to here, which is fun. I'm personally okay with that, because again, it kind of hooks you in from the start. It reels you in and makes you want to know, okay, why is this character like this? What's happening? What's going on? It leaves you with questions that make you curious what's going to be the thing that happens next. And we see our main character here. Now, I'm assuming this is Guts. I don't know for sure. They don't give us a name for him, but at the very end, the guy's like, you've got some balls. And I was waiting for that guy to be like, you sure have some guts, kid. And that was going to be the reason he was named that. I don't know. But I feel like that's the only thing I knew going into this series was that there was a guy named Guts. And this wanderer is our protagonist. So maybe next episode we'll find out if that's his name or not. I mean, it's a medieval world. Guts could totally be... I mean, there's characters named Gus. Guts is just one extra letter. But he's rather interesting. So I want to talk about him. This OP, y'all. This OP, the alt 90s rock, I am here for it. And it has a very Vinland Saga feel. If you've seen Vinland Saga, the OP with the flowers burning and the blood and the shots. I was getting so many flashbacks to Vinland Saga. I'm like, oh, this is going to fill the Vinland Saga void in my heart and maybe make me want to, season 3 even more. But that's okay. But let's talk about, we'll just call him the Black Swordsman. The Black Swordsman, which is our protagonist in all of this, who is very quiet. He's a quiet wanderer. Yeah, it's funny, I'm watching Trigun at the same time, and both series, when we were introduced to our main protagonist, I said it was a 90s anime thing, which it kind of is a trope, but both Vash from Trigun and our Black Swordsman here are introduced at a Western style saloon slight bar where everybody's talking about the woe and go of the town and all the woe that's happening and how things aren't too good here in the Midlands. And then in comes, and it seems like there's an antagonistic group that is to start the conflict, and then our main protagonist comes in and solves the conflict. So that happens here, except Vash in Trigun, without spoiling much, Vash is all about peace and love. Not getting that vibe from I don't think this guy's gonna be going peace and love anytime soon. I just don't know. Yeah, he seems like, the thing of it is, he seems like he has a sense of justice. I'm going to put justice in quotation marks because he slaughters those guys in that bar. He has a sense of justice, but it is very much, again, the question is it his will or the brand that makes him attack the others? That's the big question, because he did not, again, I'm going to use Trigun as an example. In that series, the main protagonist would have gone up to the girl at the end of the scene and been like, "Are you okay?" We see no interaction between the girl and the protagonist, almost like it didn't even matter. It was just the fact that he ran into these guys and was like, "I got to get rid of you," and then he left, right? So there is a distinction there. I'm going to be curious to see where this series takes us with this. But I'm very fascinated by the idea that in some retro 90s anime series, it's got a Western vibe to it. You see the desert. Here, it has a very European, it's rainy, there's castles. It just, the atmosphere and the vibe fits. And we have our mysterious swordsman wandering with his cloak and everything, and this sword that's as big as he is, right? So I wanted to catch and he sees the castle there. So he's on a mission, right? He's on a mission. We're just going to put here a mission to... Well, his mission was to find the lord of the castle, right? Who he seemingly defeats. We'll talk about Griffith when he's brought up in this. But he was on a mission to find the lord of the castle, which he does, the Snake Man, and seemingly defeats. We'll get his name in a little bit. They told us what it was. But we see the cart pass by him with the people that are clearly trapped inside. And it gives you that vibe that maybe they're slaves, maybe they've been captured, they've been enslaved. Is there a tie with that in our main character? I don't know. We'll have to see. But I find that interesting. But yeah, so we go to this little tavern here where they're talking about how there's not any good news, the bartender says. No good news at all. There's still nothing. Things aren't looking well even in Midlands, Castletown. And we've got these characters. The times have been dark ever since Griffith became king. So, we have the idea of Griffith, who is our king, and that he has created dark times. Dark times ahead. Now again, Vinland Saga. I'm thinking like, is Griffith and Canute going to be similar? Is Thorfinn and our main protagonist seem quite different, so we'll save that. But I'm like, Griffith, things have been dark since Griffith has become king, and the guy's instantly like, don't talk about him, like, be careful what you say, like, you could be killed, someone might be listening, right? So they're clearly trying not to, the kingdom does not want to sow any discontent amongst, with the King Griffith, so nobody needs to speak ill of him. Which is rather interesting. And then we have the whole scene with the girl and mullet men, the guys here. Probably the harshest thing here with this entire scenario is the complacency and the silence. And I feel like that's such a interesting telling moment that there's injustice and not necessarily outwardly violence. There wasn't like, when that girl came onto the scene, I'll be honest, I was fully anticipating like a sexual assault scene, and I was like, are we going there? I was bracing myself. I was like, I'm not ready for this in episode 1, but I was bracing myself, and it didn't happen. But what is so horrifying about it is the idea of how real it is, and that there wasn't any outward violence. They didn't kill anybody in there until our protagonist shows up. And they didn't like assault her or anything, not sexually. They did physically like push her down the table, which was wrong. But they clearly were violating her. And she clearly was not comfortable with it. And it was clearly wrong. But no one in the restaurant did anything. They just sat complacent and complicit and let it happen. Because they didn't want to cause trouble and they didn't want to get themselves hurt. So there's this idea of this selfishness and everyone out for themselves. And that's it. They're out for themselves. They're not really trying, they're out for themselves. They're not trying to save anybody. They just want to like get by through the day without helping anybody. And we see that in our own lives, in our own day-to-day, that people are just like, oh, I don't want to get involved. Oh, no. And then watching other people suffer because of it. So it is a very interesting and effective way of showing how this world works, that people are all out for themselves here. Nobody's helping anybody else. And then you have our protagonist come along. And the funny thing about our protagonist, the Black Swordsman, is he's not really doing it to save the girl. It doesn't seem that way. He's just trying to find information. And he's like, you guys look like you know where the Lord of the Castle is. I just happened to find you and stopped you. So the girl just got lucky, basically, because I don't think our main protagonist really cared whether he saved her or not. And then we got this purpley Kool-Aid looking drink, which is interesting, establishing that there's a little bit of I liked that the drink that they were giving establishes early on that something is supernatural in this world before we even get the snake man turning into a monster, right? Because, up until that point in the woods where we see the things surrounding our protagonist, it seemed like a very hyper-realistic world and a hyper-realistic anime. And then the moment you see that wine, you're like, it's not dark enough to be wine. It's not Kool-Aid. It's just a little funky and off, right? It's the Grimace shake melted down. But I felt bad for the girl, and then her dad, reminded me of crazy old Maurice from Beauty and the Beast. He shows up, and the moment he was on the ground, they're like, we're gonna discipline your granddaughter. I was just expecting the worst, so I'm glad that did not happen. But man, I'm glad our hero, I'm gonna use that term loosely because he's pretty violent in this episode, just shooting an arrow through a guy's head. Like the actions he does in this scene, our protagonist, they're not necessarily heroic. They're just him trying to gather information. He's not really trying to be the hero and save the day, right? He's like, I'm just looking for the guy that you all are working for, essentially. Yeah, because he's like, I want to see your master. That's all, basically. And then he gets knocked down. And yeah, again, what we need to establish about our protagonist is that he is like finding info and not afraid to torture or use violence. Because yeah, he pretty much tortures that guy for information. He steps on the arrow going into his shoulder. Like, he causes him a lot of pain. And it's like, okay, you're going to tell me what I want to know, right? Like that, you know, the actions he takes, if we weren't conditioned as the audience to think that if we didn't think he was the protagonist and possibly the hero, some of those actions you might think are a bit villainous. And so you're like, oh, okay, we're setting him up this way. And then he just basically slices these guys in half. But the thing about him is he doesn't look happy about it, right? There's this melancholy that is surrounding him. There is this melancholy in the present versus that last shot of him as a kid at the end of the episode versus the ambition and eagerness of his youth. Because the younger version of him in the flashback at the very end of the episode, he's like smiling, like ready to fight. He's like, oh yeah, let me fight you, come on. You know, seeming like maybe a feral Thorfinn from season 1 of Vinland Saga. And here, he does not seem happy about what's happening. Like he seems very melancholy, very somber about it, doesn't really want to be here. And it's like, okay, he's just not having it, right? And then that sword, that huge, ridiculous sword, he's like, you better tell him that I'm looking for him, the Black Swordsman. And yeah, the girl and the grandpa are just like, they just got lucky that he showed up. Like, literally, he didn't come to rescue her. They just dodged a bullet, right? And again, we talk about the selfishness of the people in this town. The man owning the bar, he's not like, oh, thank goodness the girl is safe, or oh my God, these people died, or oh my God, he killed all the thing. All he says is, that guy made a mess. I'm like, he slaughtered 5 people. And your response is he just made a mess. Okay, like that's where we're at. That's the type of world that we're dealing with. Now, we go to the minister in the castle, where they tell him he fights with a repeating crossbow. Yeah, this like automatic crossbow. He slaughtered the castle guards in a few seconds. Okay, so those guys, the outlawish band of mullet men, were actually castle guards. Okay. And the minister seems slightly worried about this. And the one guy's like, what would you like to do, minister? He says, we need to just go ahead and find him. And he says, how am I going to explain it to the master? So yeah, the mullet men were the guards for the master. And they're like, a man dressed in black. I'm like, that'll be easy to find in the dark, right? Go capture him. So then we go to the guy in the window, like the man with the mullet goes to tell him. He's like, that's what's going on in this town. That's what they're doing. He's like, yes. And so he's like, bring the minister to me at once. And then, yeah, he just looks like such a 90s villain with the pointy teeth and the big snake eyes, looking like a vampire at first. Yeah, the Black Swordsman, you're finally here. So he's been expecting him. Okay, so he's been expected to arrive. Okay, again, we're going to have to go back and see what's going on here. Now, the scene in the forest where our protagonist is just, you know, sleeping, minding his own business, we get some exposition in this scene, and I feel like Whiteboard Kun, we need to write it down. But things get really freaky, and he only has the one eye open. He's like, damn it, it's them again. And he goes to grab his sword, and that's when the brand on his neck starts to light up. It says, we are always watching you. Your body belongs to us. So, he has this brand on his neck, and these entities are always watching, and the brand makes him belong to them. Now, my theory at this point is that whatever these entities, monsters, whatever they are, whatever supernatural being they are, my theory is that he made a pact with them for power. He was like, I want power, and you guys are going to give it to me. And they're like, sure. And there was this devil's deal made. And they're like, you get power, but you also get us along with it. And now he's realizing, like, what this is. He's like, you cannot escape us. Your blood, flesh and bones, is all ours. And they're like, yes, that's right. It's like there's multiple beings. Everything is ours. Opulence, you own everything. And yeah, and it starts to bleed. And yeah, our poor guy, he does not seem happy about this at all. He's like, why did I have to deal with this? And he's like, shut up. And then, yeah, Lily looks down, sees like the little creepy skeleton, like the skeleton ghosts. So disturbing. It's ours. And then, yeah, he sees all of them surrounding him. Right? All these ghosts. The brand. The brand. The brand. Oh my God, the repetition there. As long as you have this brand, your agony, pain, sadness, and even your fear, everything is ours. It's like they're feeding off of it, right? They're just feeding off of everything with him, which is so interesting, right? So interesting. They're like these little gremlin-y ghouls that are just slowly feeding off of him. Fascinating. And he's like, enough. And yeah, it's so creepy, right? And so then we have these characters, right? That are in this seizure warning segment where there's a very creepy, like, it looks like a baby. It looks like Mayuri's baby doll Bankai from Bleach. But there's this really creepy old man. It looks like he's wearing monocles. And there's him holding his hands. And then there is seemingly another character. I want to get close up of them, right? Because there's them. And it's so dark and hard to see, right? And then it looks like a woman that looks kind of like a vampire or a dark fairy or something. So there's some kind of doctor or old man. And then a vampire woman. Your guess is as good as mine at this point. I'm assuming we'll find out who they are. They seem to be tied to the brand, so clearly if he ran into them, they are connected to why he has it. So, okay. Yeah, but there's also a third one. There's like a baby-faced one too that looks super creepy. Like, what the hell? What is happening? I don't blame him for tripping out. Yeah, and the girl has like the big red lips. Yeah, and there's the old man one, and then there's like a baby with this head looking creepy as hell, and then like this fat baby demon, puppy monkey baby, I don't know. It's creepy as all get out. I'm not sure I want to know what this is, but we're gonna find out, I'm sure. And then, yep, the three of them together, God, it almost gives me a headache the way that it is. And then, yep, our protagonist, he's in the darkness. And then he sees something and he says, Griffith. And it's in the red, like in red. And then we see, okay, and we see something come up. Okay, so the reason why I thought that at the very end, we have in the end credits a silver-haired, androgynous looking character is because of the pink lips. Like, you see something in armor, and you see the blue eye looking out, and you see this like pink tinged lips, and they seem to be like kind of androgynous, right? So in the armor is our protagonist. Our protagonist has met Griffith at some point. We don't know what their connection is. I'm like, are they going to be enemies to lovers? Can I start shipping them now? Can I start that? For those of you new to this channel, I ship a lot, and I don't judge anybody that doesn't ship, and I don't judge anybody that ships differently, but I do like shipping, so this may happen. But we don't know anything about Griffin at all. We know nothing about Griffith except that he's very pretty. That's like, oh, and he's a king, and things are dark times. So yeah. Obviously, and our protagonist obviously does not like Griffith at all. So, what do we do with that? What do we do with that? But yeah, our protagonist is not happy and is suffering by the onslaught of whatever the hell he's been branded with. So yeah. I do like the dinner scene where the one guy brings the minister back. It reminded me of Denethor from Lord of the Rings, where he's has the long table and he's sitting there just eating his food. Fief Lord. Fief Lord. Interesting. So we have the idea of the Fief Lord. I'm assuming the Fief Lord is the Snake Man. Assuming that's the case, but yeah. I just like that he seems so nonchalant, just eating his food like it's no big deal. The thing that's interesting about this is he has like the suit of armor sitting next to him creepily that he's going to get into, right? And the thing about it is they go after our main protagonist, right? They're like, I'd love to prepare such festivities for him. Like, they go through the town, like, trying to find him. But then, yeah, he says at the end there, he's like, I don't care about any of you, right? And he ends up killing the minister. And, like, there ends up being a massacre. And it's like, he doesn't even care. He's just trying to, like, make it chaotic for when our protagonist arrives. It's the craziest thing, right? And he just kills everybody in the village. And that seems to lure out our main hero. Our main protagonist. And so, yeah, and then they have their battle. He says, I heard rumors about you. You're the one, the black swordsman who makes trouble for us apostles. So, I'm assuming that the Thief Lord here is an apostle. Maybe an apostle of the king? I'm assuming. But I guess it is implied that this is not the first apostle that our protagonist has faced head on. He's like one of the later ones, and he was, getting prepared for him to show up. So that's all rather interesting. And so that's when he's like, you're a mere human. Do you think you can defy us? And then he has this weird thing around his neck that has a nose, has eyes, has lips. It looks like a head. It's very strange. He says, do you think a human can defy us? And that's when he's like, oh, it's a behelit. A behelit. It doesn't have a capital letter on it, so it doesn't seem like it's a major thing. Like it's just an item, an icon, a talisman, a behelit. I'm sure we'll find out what that is. I feel like this is going to be one of those stories that when it introduces concepts, it's going to explain them for you later. So I have faith that the series knows what it's doing. And so, yeah, and then they face each other. I love the idea that it can become a monster. And again, our protagonist seems not happy that he has to attack him, right? Doesn't seem happy that he has to attack him. And the thing that's interesting about it is when they first have the fight, he shoots to kill the Thief Lord. Like he just like, I'm gonna take you out right now. And then he seems to be remorseful. He seems to almost be like, pitying or showing remorse or empathy for the fact that he had to kill him. But then he comes back as this freaking monster and turns into an actual snake, which I'm like, okay, cool. We've established in the first episode this is a thing that can happen. Good deal. Glad we've established this. And he attacks him, like nearly crushes him. I'm sorry, but the face inside the mouth where it's like, blah, 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 it's like a face hugger aliens. It's so creepy. It's so gross. I'm like, there's something mildly sexual about it. I'm like, nope. Not having it. But yeah, he's like, no human can kill me. And he just looks like this giant monster. And of course, even the men are like, oh, monster. But then, yeah, that's when our protagonist goes for the sword. And he gets his arm crushed, right? And he goes through all this pain getting crushed by the snake. He says, now you understand how fragile you humans are. Well, maybe not so much. And then before it's the end, he goes to pick him up. And that's when he like basically fires the cannon. And honestly, he looks so melancholy and sad. Our protagonist says, we like pulls him up by the head. He looks so sad. He's like, I'm going to enjoy eating you and filling my hungry stomach, which he was just eating a second ago, right? And instead he fires the cannon at him. So it seems to be there's like this remorse at first, but then there is almost remorse or sadness. But then the monster continues to taunt him, which leads to his downfall. And he says that, humanity is weak, blah, blah, blah. And that's when he fires the cannon, which was a great shot. That was a great manga looking shot. And then uses the sword to slice him up. But then he said, you said a human couldn't kill you, right? And he shoots the arrow through his eye. I was like, why the eye? I'm so squeamish about eyes getting attacked. And he does it anyway. And he says, you, that brand, you're right. And yeah, that's when he stabs him in the face in the eye with the arrow. Humans are fragile and mortal. But even if we are wounded or tortured, he says, he keeps finding the arrows that we must continue to live. It's like basically the protagonist is really melancholy and sad until you keep pushing his buttons. And when you keep pushing his buttons, you piss him off. And then when you piss him off, he's like, well, now I have to destroy you. Why did you do this? Right? So it's the idea that he says that despite their mortality and fragility, they still live. Basically suggesting that the world is cruel, to borrow a theme from another show, that the world is cruel and, we're mortal and fragile, but we're still stuck here. So what are we expected to do? Are we just going to go along and let you do whatever you want to us? No. That's what he's kind of suggesting. He's like, you would like us just to let you run all over us. And he's like, you should feel the same pain that we feel and see what I mean. And then the guy, like the snake man, begs him to stop. And he says, what did you do when people said those words to you? He's like, and so our protagonist is very much in the eye for an eye, and he's missing an eye, seemingly. He's not opened it up yet. Eye for an eye mentality. Being like, the funny thing is, it's not treat others how you want to be treated. It's treat others how you've been treated is basically where he's at right now. He's like, he's like, you've treated our kind like dirt. So I'm going to do the exact same to you and see how you like it is basically, that cycle of violence. He's just continuing and he just keeps shooting it. Like the snake is cut in half. It's going to die. But he's just shooting it just to make him feel pain. And as it's screaming for him to stop and for him to help. And then that's it. And then he goes and grabs the behelit right there, holds it in his hand, and then crushes, he like puts his fist around it. I don't see if he crushes it or not. And then he goes on his way, and we cut back to the present where he has both of his eyes and he's a young man. Now granted, he's a young man. He's still like buff as hell, right? He's just shorter, right? He's just a shorter guy, still buff as hell. He looks like if Yusuke like got shredded, And then he's fighting all of these other soldiers. And he's got the little sword, and everything. Do you really want to fight me, kid? It's not the same sword he had before though. I mean, it's a long sword that's just as long as he is. So that's interesting. So I'm wondering if, because when we saw him at the blacksmith at the beginning of the episode, he was clearly older and as he is now. So I'm wondering if he had this sword as long as he is. And then when he got older and went to the blacksmith, he wanted the same type of sword he had when he was younger, just bigger because he's bigger. So interesting. And then, the guy's like, you've got some balls, kid. And I was like, oh, just say he's got some guts. Come on, give us the roll credits. And then he goes towards him. But we got the pink lips and the blue eye of the end card there. So that seems like Griffith. I'm very curious about Griffith because Griffith, our main protagonist seems to really hate him. And so I'm like, what has he done? And then he seems so handsome and pretty. So I'm like, is it like a Lucifer thing? I don't know. I don't know. But yes, he seems like a 90s BL character. So I'm really excited for Griffith. I'm a big fan of flamboyant antagonists, so I'm hoping that's maybe the case. We'll see. But we get like a cast of characters. There's someone that looks like a woman, and I only say that because it looks like they have breasts in the pink dress, but has the short brown hair. And then we've got like 2 or 3 characters that look like elves because they have the ears and the pointy noses. And then we've got another guy that looks like a comic relief character with the black hair. We've got another guy, looks like if Usopp gained 300 pounds. And then, we've got an Armin equivalent that looks like an elf. So, I'm so fascinated. I'm really curious. I probably will not wait to watch episode 2, so I can at least get a couple episodes in before y'all start commenting. But I'm really curious. This first episode was a nice introduction of our protagonist, but now I want to know more, so... But I'm curious to know your thoughts down below, what you all thought of this episode being introduced to us. But in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll be back very soon with episode 2 of Berserk.